Hey guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to write clean code inside React.js. So I have already prepared a few examples that I will leave them inside my GitHub, so you will find the link in the description. So I have 5 different examples in here and I'm going to show you how to write them in more clean way. So let's start with complex condition. So as you can see inside this component, we have a really complex condition in here and you can write it in more clean way. So we have a props, which is status coming from the parent component, and inside here we have a useState hook. So based on this condition, we are going to set our text inside this useState hook. So I'm going to copy and paste this component to show you the clean one. Okay, so I just change this name to be clean condition and let's export it. Okay, so now instead of this if else condition, we can use an object. So up here I'm going to declare an object. I'm going to call this status object, and now inside this object we need to have some value pairs. So as you can see, if the status is equal to loading, so it means our key is this loading. So if it's equal to loading, then we are going to print this loading text. Okay, so we are going to add it inside this string. And similar to this one, we are going to say if it's success, we are going to print the success text. Okay, and also if it's error, then we are going to print this error text. So now instead of this useState hook, we are going to get this status object and just pass this status here. So now it will look based on this value pairs, it will print the data. Okay, so for this unknown status, we need to copy this from here. We are going to set a condition. So if this condition missed, then we are going to print this value. Otherwise, we are going to have a paragraph here and just print our text here. Okay, so if none of these values matches with status, then we are going to print this unknown status. So I just get rid of this all code. Now you can see our code is more clean here. Okay, so this is our first example. Let's save it, and our next example is this inline styles. So as you can see inside here, we have some inline styles. So we can change that to class name. For example, for this one, we can write here, let's say container, and we have a class name for this one, let's say title, and also for this one, description. So let's open this index.css here. Okay, and we are going to have a weight of the term for the container. So let's say, and weight is going to be the term. Okay, now you can just get rid of this one. And also for the title, let's copy this for 3 times and let's call it title. And for this one, we need to have a font size of term. And finally, we need to have description. Okay, and as you can see, we have a color of red. Now just get rid of this inline code here. As you can see, we have much more clean code now. So instead of inline styling, you can just write class name or ID in here and then just write your styling inside your CSS file. Okay, so the next example is this long use effect. Let's close this file. So as you can see, I have 2 components in here. The first one get the user data and the second one get the user post. As you can see, we have fetched the API. I don't have any API in here. I just write the text, but we'll have an API. So we need to have a useState hook to get our data. Similar to this one, we need to have a useState hook for loading to track the loading of this fetching data. And finally, we need to have a useState hook to track the errors of our API. Okay, so down here we need to check if this API has an error, then we are going to print this text here. If there is no error, then we are going to check if we have a loading, then we are going to print this loading text. Otherwise we just map through this user data. Okay, so now down here we have the same thing, so it means we have the same logic in both components. So to avoid using the same code over and over again, React.js has a cool feature which is called custom hook. So we need to have a custom hook, and we are going to move all of them that are common in both component in that custom hook, and then just import that in each component. So for example, outside here I'm going to have a new folder, and let's call this hook. Okay, so I'm going to have a custom hook which is called use fetch hook. So whenever you want to make a new custom hook, make sure to use this use keyword at the beginning of your component name. Okay, so now inside here we need to have our component. So I just copy everything from here. Let's copy all of them, and I'm going to paste them here. Okay, so let's get rid of this return for now. Let's import this use state hook and also the use effect hook. So now as you can see, we need to have a different API for both components, right? So in here we need to get the API link, and let's change this one to be API link. Okay, and the rest will remain the same. Okay, and we don't need this one because it's not working here. Now all you need to do is just return a new object, and you need to return all of these use state hook from here. Okay, and also it's better to change this name, so I'm going to call this data and set data. Okay, so we are going to change this name also.
Okay, and let's actually copy and paste them here, and this data.
Okay, so now we are going to return our new use state hook. Let's replace them here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to save this file, and now we need to get all of this data from this custom hook inside our component. So let's get rid of this all here, and I'm going to say const, and we are going to get them from use fetch hook. Okay, so now if you remember, we need to pass this API link. So in here we just pass this API link here. Okay, and that's it. So now we are going to replace the use state hook. If we have this error, we're going to change this one, and also we need to change this user post with this one and this loading. Okay, now you can see our code is much more clean and simple. Okay, you can do the same thing here. So we are going to remove everything from here, and let's copy this and add it here. Okay, let's replace this data with this one, and now you can see we don't have to add this use effect hook and use state hook for both components, and instead we can use this custom hook. Now our components are much more clean and simple to read. Okay, our next example is going to be this overusing condition. So as you can see, we have a props which is user coming from the parent component, and in here we need to check if we have user, then we are going to print the username, otherwise the user is not found. And also we need to check if we have user and user.post exists, then we are going to map through this user post. Okay, and then just print this post title, and the key is going to be this post.id. Otherwise we are going to say no post is found. If you have a more complex component, then it will be a mess inside your component. So to avoid this mess, you need to take out these all conditions and add them in a separate function and just import them down here. For example, up here, I'm going to say user condition, okay, and it's a function here. Okay, so I'm going to copy this from here and add this here. Okay, so we need to receive this user, and instead of this one, we just pass this function and user inside this function. Okay, and you can do the same thing for the user. So up here, we need to say print user. So now inside here, we need to return. Okay, so now we can receive user in here, and inside here let's have a fragment, and I'm going to move everything from here inside this function. Okay, now I can just get rid of this one from here, and we need to print this function. Okay, let's pass the user here. So now, as you can see, our component looks much more cleaner than before. Okay guys, so our next example is going to be this props drilling. So props drilling means that we are passing props from one component to other component. So for example, in here we have this grandparent component. So inside here we have a useState hook. The idea is to print this data inside our child component. So to do that, we need to first pass this data to our parent component, which is this one, and from parent component we need to pass that to the child component, and finally we need to print this data inside the child component. So this is called props trailing. So to avoid this props trailing, we need to use context API. So in context API, we just store this data outside of this component, and you can import that like other component. Okay, so let me show you in code. So outside here, we need to have a new folder, and I'm gonna call this context. So let's call this post context. Make sure to make it in capital letter .jsx. Okay. Now at first we need to create our context. So I'm gonna call this post, and we need to create our context here. Okay, so now we need to receive children from here and print it inside here. And now to be able to have access to the children in all components, we need to wrap this with this post context provider. So we need to write here provider. Okay, so now we need to wrap our React.js code with this post context. Okay, so I'm going to open this main.js section here, and we need to wrap our component with this post context. Okay, so now if I add a useState hook in here, let's say data and set data, which is equal to useState hook, and it's going to be an empty array by default. So now we need to have a value key here and just pass our data and set data here. Okay, so let's open this component in here. So from now on, we don't have to pass data like this one, so you can get rid of this data, and instead you can get data from this context API. So to get this one, we need to have a new function, export const get context data. It's gonna be a function, and we are going to use context hook and just pass this post context generate inside of this. Okay, so from now on, using this function, you can import this data and set data in whatever component you need. Okay, just import it here, and now you don't have to pass this as props anymore. So just get rid of this one, and also actually we need this data inside our child component. Let's get rid of this one and just add it here. Okay, so from now on you don't need to get it using props. You can import it inside this component or this component, or if you have any other component outside of this component, you can import it this way. Okay, so this is a way to solve props trailing in React.js. Okay, let's close all the components, and our last example is going to be this: use the same logic. So as you can see, I have 3 components in here, and all of my components are having the same logic. So as you can see, we have a data props in here, and we just map through this data and change the title to be uppercase, and finally we just map through this print data and display this title. So we have the same logic in all components. So now to solve this problem, we can use a reusable component. Okay, so outside here I'm going to have a new folder and call that utils, and inside here I'm going to make a new reusable component. So I'm going to call this component. Okay, so let's generate our code in here. So what I need to do here, I'm going to copy everything from here and paste it here, and let's receive this data as props. So now let's save this file, and now instead of this all code, we just return this component. Let's import this component from this utils folder, and we need to pass this data to this component. Okay, you can do the same thing here and in here. Okay, now you can see our code looks much more simple and more readable. Alright guys, that's it. That's a few examples that I wanted to show you how to write clean code in React.js. If you want to watch more videos like this, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, and give a subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.